Karishma here, Head of Training at CCA, and I've got a really fun live discussion for you today. We'll be talking all about how we see success, even with the most challenging of separation anxiety cases and alone time panic. And I'm being joined by Malena DeMartini, who is, if you don't know her already, she is pretty much the godmother of separation anxiety. I say and I don't say this lightly, she's probably one of the people who influenced me the most in my career as a dog trainer. I am a certified separation anxiety trainer under her program. And I did that in just when COVID was happening and lockdown was happening. And it honestly transformed how I train with separation anxiety dogs, but then honestly with all other kind of behavior challenges as well. And I've known Malena for many years now. She was my mentor and my teacher in the program for months, and she, graded my work and did my exam, and then we've kept in touch over the years. And when I was thinking about programming for this time of year, I know that as the weather gets worse, as we go into the winter, separation anxiety pups can really suffer. And so I'm excited to be having her join us today. So let me see if I can find her and just invite her up. Give us just 1 second, my loves, and we'll see if I can get her in. If you guys have any questions about separation anxiety, let me know in the chat. We can put it there and we can answer those as we go through. And there she is. Hello, Malena.
Hi, Karishma. How are you? So good to be here.
I'm doing so well. I'm very excited because I get to spend the next, half an hour or so with you talking about the thing that we both love to talk about so much.
Love.
So I feel pretty, as we say in the UK, I feel pretty jammy. That means lucky, but it's a good UK phrase. I feel pretty jammy right now. I've told you guys a little bit about already how I know Malena and how I went through the program with you many years ago and how we kind of kept in touch and just how influential that CSAT program was on me, not just for separation work, but the way that I was able to integrate it into all the other work that I do. And so for those who don't know you, maybe I can just pass the mic down and you can just give us a full intro, because, and I say this it's not light to say this, I think you're one of the folks who had the most influence on the dog training industry, in the last century, literally. I think that's literally not even an exaggeration, because I think you changed a lot with the CSAT program. And I want people to know more. So tell us a little bit about what you do, because you're like, what? But actually, Malena, it's a really big deal. Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
You're very, very kind. Thank you. I'm going to start, before introducing myself, I'm going to start by saying one of the things that you just said about the influence that the CSAT program has had with respect to, of course, separation anxiety, but with respect to the transitional and types of skills that we can apply to other behaviors, right? And I think that's really important. So anybody that's listening today, know that separation anxiety, yeah, that's what we're talking about, and we're passionate about it. But there are so many aspects of what we do with separation anxiety that can be transferred to so many different types of behaviors. And I hope to see one day that people are working with their other dog behaviors in the same fashion that we do as CSATs.
And that exactly is the thing that is I think the most impactful thing, is that you made this thing accessible to people. And anyway, sorry to continue. I'm just going off on my own tangent now. Please introduce yourself.
All good. It's all good. So my name's Malena DeMartini, and I have been working exclusively with separation related behaviors for over 23 years now. And in that time, lots and lots of things have happened. And I think while I'm proud of the books that I've authored, and I'm proud of my online self-paced course called Mission Possible, I think the thing that I may be most proud of is all of the incredible CSATs and watching the work that they're doing. It's awe-inspiring. And not that I want to toot my own horn, but one of the things that was so gratifying to me was to see that what I had been doing for so long, that I felt really strongly about became replicated many times over, and good science is replicated, right? And so it felt good. It felt good because for a long time I was the lone person in the boat out in the middle of the sea, thinking, I think this is working because it works with all the ones I work with. But now we've had this beautiful replication, which makes me so happy. So I also want to mention that not only have I been working with dogs and their guardians, I went through a separation anxiety protocol of my own for my own dog. Her name is Teeny DeMartini. She was my beloved heart dog. And I know I'm not going to start crying because we just lost her a few months ago. So, but I think that gives me an interesting perspective because I've not just been on the behavior consultant working with the client. I've also been the client, and it gives me great insight into the tremendous nuance that separation anxiety has.
Oh, nuance, that word comes up over and over again. And I think that is a large part of what you were able to bring to the conversation around separation anxiety. And for those who don't even know, like, you created basically a big movement away from confinement and distraction based or even punitive based kind of behavior plans towards desensitization as the primary gold standard treatment. So can you tell us a little bit more, just like your like quick and dirty intro for those who don't understand anything about this yet?
Sure. Just historically, we were all taught crate, food, toy, and or possibly some punishment with respect to put dog in crate when dog starts barking, toss the can of pennies, or use the collar, e-collar, or something like that. And that is history gone, no longer out there, which makes my heart so happy because these dogs are suffering. These dogs are experiencing tremendous panic. And so to add something, as you mentioned, punitive is if you were stressed out and someone whacked you across the head, would that make you less stressed? I don't think so, personally. Mm-hmm. So what I developed, years ago, was the ability to teach dogs through very, very gradual and systematic introductions or exposures to alone time, and build upon those with very careful complexity to become longer and longer and longer, and to incorporate all of the elements of the actual absence. That might be your shoes or your jacket or your bag, and those get folded in a little bit later. But in a nutshell, we are talking about gradually introducing safe alone time to dogs. And as they learn that a little bit more time is safe, they can learn that even a little more than that is safe. Mm-hmm. To me, it's a powerful motivator. I'm often asked, yeah, well, what's in it for the dog if you don't give them food, or if you don't give them, that sort of, I've been asked that on many occasions. I think safety is an incredibly powerful motivator, far more powerful, in my opinion, than the, pieces of kibble tossed around the living room. So yeah, that's 100%. Kind of it.
No, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant nutshell. And I have to say, like, as I went through your program, it was multiple months. I don't remember if it was like 4 months or 3 months. It was multiple days a week that I was in class. I had homework every week. When I say in a nutshell, that is a nutshell. Like, I gave you quite a tough job there to be like, quick, 30 seconds, go, because it's actually super complex what you've created. And it has been replicated, I think, in simpler forms a few times. And I think today I want to chat a little bit more about like the nuance that you taught me over those 4 months or so that we were in the program together. Part of what you've done that's amazing is create this protocol, which is almost like step by steps. Like, it's not step by steps, but it's almost like step by steps. First you do this, then we do this. We do 5 sessions approximately a week. Each session looks a little bit like this, and that sort of a formula was not something I'd ever seen really in dog training before. And it was a revelation to me. Like, firstly, because wow, we're thinking about it in this much detail.
Right.
Before, I was always aware of the details, but it was more intuitive. Like, I was like reacting out of intuition, and you were like, let's write down all the details. Yes. And I was like, what? All of them? Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that, like, nuance of your protocol, because I think people don't realize how much detail there is in what we learn as CSATs.
Yeah, it's interesting because I also struggle with how to describe it in certain ways, but I'll do my best. Because like for instance, one of the words you just used is that we created this formula, and everybody should understand there's some principles and practices surrounding how to implement an effective, efficient protocol for separation anxiety, but it is 100% based on the dog in front of us. Not that Fluffy's plan is never going to apply to Buddy. We will never write the same steps twice for other, to compare to another dog. We're truly dealing with that one dog in front of us. And what we are talking about, though, is structure. And I don't mean structure necessarily for the dog, but the structure of the daily protocol has some really important factors in it, including creating both variability and predictability. People oftentimes are like, how can you do that? How can you do that? There has to be some predictability to help dogs feel safe. But if we use gentle and very gradual variability, we can generalize the training over time. And we can also, and I could go off on this for a long time, but what I'll say is that structure is paramount, but the variability on a day-to-day basis and the considerable tailoring to the dog in front of us is super important. And then part of that, of course, is we got to track a lot of data. Like you said, we write everything down.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the change you made there from like not a formula, it's a structure. And that's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's a better word, because what you were able to do, if comparing it to something like, Karen Overall's relaxation protocol, there are literally step by steps that you go through with every single dog. I'd seen stuff like that before. Yours was so different. It was more like this very complicated flowchart of if this, then that you have to apply on an individual basis. And there's a science and an art to it. It's not, and I think, what was it that you said to me the other day that sticks in my mind? It was like, you can't work on separation anxiety with an app. What was it? You can't solve complex behavior problems with an app. That's what you said. And I was like, that's genius. You're right, because it's complex. There are so many different facets at play. And so we have this protocol, we have this structure that we use that guides us, but each case is completely individual and completely different, not just in the separation anxiety itself, correct, but also then in all the other behaviors that the dog's exhibiting and all the other things that go on in the dog's life. And that's the difference, I think, between like a very, very good practitioner who's going to do a really phenomenal job of giving you individualized support, and one where it's a little bit more cookie cutter. And you're likely going to see a lot less nuance in the way, in both the application, and then the results are going to be affected as well by that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's so important to recognize, because it is tempting. And even students in the CSAT program always say, well, like, what percentage should I increase, or things like that. And I have to answer that time and time again to say, there is no applicable formula. It is about how much you would increase for that dog that you're working with, that one dog. It'll be very different for dog number 2 and dog number 3 and dog number 150. I mean, 23 years of doing this, I've never taken a protocol and just slapped it on another dog, so I mean, that says a lot. And so unfortunately, with various apps that are out there and formulaic processes, it really is start from X duration, increase by X percentage, etc. And there are some dogs that may be applicable for, but for the most part, it's going to be I should say at best, it's going to be not helpful, but at worst, we can actually start to create sensitization. And that is a big concern. I mean, we already have a big enough problem with the dog not being comfortable and panicking when left alone. We don't need to add to that stress in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, 100%. It's like I said it like when I was talking about separation stuff with Sarah Stremming on her podcast. I was like, this protocol is powerful, and so if it can do this good, it can also do a lot of bad. And a poorly applied protocol, especially with guardians who are really dedicated and who will plow away at it for months and months and months, can actually do a lot of damage. And one of the things that you taught me, and one of the ways you revolutionized the way I teach, is you recommend that we write sessions every day for our clients. And at the beginning I was like, that's absurd.
And
like,
that's
as if
everybody's reaction.
Yeah, we're all like,
I
what?
can't
No.
work with clients every day.
We're like, what are you talking about? You were like, 5 days a week, you need to go in, check in on what's been going on in the last 24 hours, write that session for them, and then repeat the next day. And at the time, obviously, I didn't really understand just how much detail went into being successful in the hardest, especially 10-20% of cases. You can't mess up like that. If there's a storm and Fluffy's a little bit more nervous on Tuesday than they were on Monday, if you wrote all your sessions on Sunday and you didn't know there was going to be a storm, you're screwed. You've messed up that whole week potentially, and you won't know until the next week or two when you come back in to check. And that's how I think I see folks not seeing the success that they want to be seeing, is because they're kind of doing almost what they need to be doing, but not quite, and then burning themselves out in the process. And it's just such a shame seeing it happening. So that's like one of the things I just wanted to like, just that in itself, I think, changed the game for me. You get people pushing back though, right? Because it's not normal in the industry to do that.
It's not. And I will tell you, there's two biggest reasons why I think that 5-day-a-week communication, 5-day-a-week changing the what the dog is going to experience, what the guardian is going to implement in their training every day, basically, is not only imperative for understanding how to adjust criteria, because you said it right. If I wrote all of my training plans on Sunday for the next 5 days or the next 2 weeks or something, and something happened, it doesn't even have to be an external influence, right? It could be that the dog said, you know what, I decided 5 minutes isn't quite what I'm ready for yet. And so then now you're waiting at least 5 days or 2 weeks before you can go backwards and undo those changes. So it's imperative to be able to create that daily set of criteria for the guardian and the dog, so that we can pivot quickly if anything ever arises. But the other piece that I think is so imperative about doing 5-day-a-week work the way we do it is the relationship and the communication that we build with clients is unparalleled. It is such a critical piece of working through a protocol, because people feel alone, they feel highs, they feel lows, they feel excited, they feel frustrated. There's so much emotion involved with just doing a few simple steps of training every day, right? And so the human quotient is enormous, and being able to communicate this way on a daily basis, I think, is a total game changer. And it's something that you can't get from a formula or an app, right? And that's a big missing piece.
That communication piece is so important, because it's like you're learning about the human's inner world, right? So that you can really set criteria for them effectively. Like I'll know my clients so well, I'll like know if they can't do hard sessions that week, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to make it easier for you. Additionally, you mentioned the data that we're tracking. Like we are tracking so many different pieces of data, and this is where, like, for me, I bang on Malena on this page about like the importance of a holistic plan, the importance of like looking at the dog as a whole person. And we have this kind of 4-step like heal framework that we use to help remind our clients of the different areas that affect behavior, other than just training, like health and stress management and activity and enrichment and stuff like that. And we're tracking, personally, we're tracking all of that. we're tracking how all of the relevant factors. Obviously, you can't literally track everything at once, but if your dog has a funny tummy, we're tracking that. If your dog struggles more when they have less exercise, we're tracking that. If your dog is going to be much more sensitive to sounds and therefore melt down in alone time sessions after a big walk in the city, we're tracking all of those things, because it is like a delicate balance. It's a balancing act, or like, you know, spinning plates or something like that. And that's something that you really stressed to us so much in the separation in the CSAP program. And I remember you telling us about how you were a statistician and how, you know, you would, and these stories you had to us about like how when you first started doing this, you'd be literally dropping off tape recorders at people's houses and then picking them up and watching it back and being like, oops, I messed up that duration. Like you really learned like the hard way, all the different ways that it affects, these things affect the behavior. And yeah, can you just like tell us a little bit more about that? Because I remember you stressing so much about that in the program, and I think that was such an important part for me, a key takeaway for me.
You know that I can geek out all afternoon on data tracking. So here, so I'm going to do my best to not talk for a good hour and a half just on this topic. I'm teasing you. What's so, to me, when we look at the dog as a whole and we start to, and typically we start by tracking the basics because we don't yet know the dog, right?
Yeah.
And tracking too many variables is actually ineffective because we can't distill that information. But tracking the pieces of information that are specifically needed for that dog, for instance, the dog that has a bad tummy, and we know that this dog has some, you know, occasional GI stuff, we would track that. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I want to make really clear, it's only by tracking that data that we can ask questions of the data, right? So a dog may have, was using this example of that GI stuff, that dog might do better on the days that he's not feeling well because he just lies there. So we don't know until, I mean, he's not really better. I mean, but he may appear as though he's not reacting to the alone time because of his upset tummy. And it's important to ask questions of the data. Like when we sort data and distill through data, I think it's important to say, what is potentially, because we don't know yet, what is potentially influencing those really great days? What is potentially influencing those not so great days? Yeah. And how can we take what we want out of the days that are not performing very well, yeah, and take stuff out of the great days and put them into those other make sure we're including those variables, right? There is so much that we can learn from the data. And I think you probably remember this story, and I think it's an important one, and I'll be brief, but I think my first real, I mean, I have been data tracking forever with this issue, but my first real eye opener was with a dog who would do well, and then start to slip and slip and slip and slip. And then all of a sudden would start to do well again, and up and up and up, and slip and slip and slip. And, typically we realize that when there is some inconsistency like that, something is at play. And that's where our data helps us so much. So with this particular dog, we started tracking as much as we possibly could or thought we could. And fast forward to much later, after collecting a couple months of data, we started to see patterns, and those patterns and trends are what we're really looking for, right? Mm-hmm. And the pattern was that after a vet visit or a grooming appointment, the dog started to get better and better and do really well And it was further as the appointment got further, she got further away from that vet appointment or groomer's appointment, started to decline. So we were able to collaborate with the veterinarian to figure out that, number one, the dog was having some pain issues, and the pain was being alleviated because at the vet she was getting like cold laser treatment and stuff like that. So she would have a lot less pain, and then would do well. And so we actually not only helped that dog get through her separation related problems, we were able to change her medical side of things so that she wasn't up, up, up because I feel good, down, down, down because I don't.
That is just exactly it. We use the data to ask questions so that we can remove barriers in areas outside of the separation anxiety protocol itself. And I think one of the mistakes I see folks making is they just kind of plow away at a protocol, at the same thing again and again and again for months and months. And they're not doing the thing where they ask the questions about the data and investigate why is it that we're seeing just this up and down consistent regressions, or why is it that we've been working for 6 months and we haven't broken past 3 seconds outside. What is it that's in the way? And it's either we have to change the way we're writing the sessions specifically, or it's this holistic piece, right? And so many cases popped into my head when you gave that pain example, because I can think of one off the top of my head where we figured out that after going to one park versus park A, park B, when they went to park A, they'd do much worse in their separation anxiety work. When they went to park B, they did great. And when we investigated further, and park A was full of squirrels, and the dog would be chasing and running and chasing the squirrels, and then on park B didn't have any squirrels, and so the dog would be sniffing and walking. And again, we used that data to identify like hip dysplasia, because the dog was running around and then feeling pain afterwards and doing worse. And similarly, we can figure out if an activity schedule isn't quite right for your young athletic breed. We might track how many walks they go on, what kind of walks, what type of play they do, how many friends friend-like meetups do they have with other dogs. And I've definitely had cases before where we've been stuck in a protocol for separation anxiety, and I've looked at the data and gone, the answer is we need 2 play dates a week, not 1 play date a week. And they've gone, what? And I'm like, no, for real though, like I think that was going to be the solution. And then I've been right. And so sometimes that's what I think I wanted to stress about. That's the whole, I wanted to come on and be like, it's such magic because it's so complicated. And you are like such a big part of who opened my eyes to all of that. So yeah, I'm just really excited to have everyone sort of meet you, see you, and talk more about that stuff, because we talk so much about the desensitization, and that's great, but the other stuff is just as important, I think. And you always stress that to me in such a big way.
I'm glad that you took that away, and I hope that all CSATs are taking that away from our educational program. One of the things that made me think about what you were just saying is, now that I've been doing it this way for so long, I just can't imagine any sort of complex behavior not having sufficient and oftentimes volumes of data to be able to, data drives criteria decision making, period. And when we ask those questions and search for trends and patterns, and those indicate where we need to change things in our criteria, it is super powerful. Actually, I was just at one of the conferences I was just speaking at. I don't remember.
I know you've been everywhere.
I've been a lot of places lately. But it was in Riverside. Okay, Ken Ramirez was the keynote close speaker, and he had a fascinating presentation that included so many things about driving criteria decision through data. And he put up a quote from Susan Friedman when he was talking about all this, and it's one I had never seen. And it said, and I hope I don't mess it up, but the gist of it is, behavior modification without data collection is unethical. I was like, whoa, and I feel that because before because I've been doing this for so long, I didn't really know how to track the way that we track now. I did, but it was all manual in logs and things. And I just think back, like, how was I making those decisions? Like you said, when I used to carry my big, 8mm video camera to my client's house. It's actually hilarious that I
So
did those
funny.
things.
I love it.
But collecting the tapes at the end of the week, that gave me a week's worth of data that could have been really wrong criteria that was chosen, so it's so important to this process.
It absolutely is. And when you were talking about the importance of data tracking, the thing that came into my mind is that like we chronically overwhelmed humans with stressed dogs in the world that we're in today. We're not the best narrators. We're not the most reliable witnesses, maybe, of the actual facts, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of part of what makes humans and the whole scientific method kind of cool, is that we say, maybe as an individual basis, we don't have all the answers, but collectively we can zoom out and gather like new perspectives that will like inform us in different ways. And that's what, to me, data collection is. It's like a humbling of the behavior practitioner, where you say, I need to observe something else. It's not that I'm the dog whisperer. It's not that I have this intuition, this knowing that other people don't have. Like, that knowing is just data collecting. But just like really fast data processing that you're doing in the background on a tab that you're not aware of in your brain. We're just bringing it to the forefront. And I think when I was kind of like singing your praises about how you changed the dog training industry, I mean, I'm laughing, I think it's genuinely true, because telling people to track data to the degree that you do, and then teaching them step by step how to do it, I'd never seen anything like that before, ever, outside of like a zoo. And I never thought it would be possible to distill that into everyday dog behavior and consulting. And I now do it with all of my cases, not just separation anxiety, with everything. We do a similar or hybridized version of what we were taught in the CSAT protocol. And it has made our outcomes just skyrocket. Like, the outcomes are so much better than they used to be, and if they're not, I know exactly why.
It makes me so thrilled. And I think one thing we should say is that for any dog guardian that is listening, the professionals might be totally geeking out about this data stuff, and you, even as a guardian, might be geeking out about all this data stuff. But this is one reason why I think it's so important to work with a professional, because I told you early in our talk that I was in the client's shoes. I was a client for a while, and when it's your own dog, you are not able to distill in a sort of more clinical. And I'm not saying we don't care, but just the clinical detail that we need to see. And I want, at least personally, I want my client to report behavior to me, not interpret behavior for me. It is their job to write down, dog, walked away from here, turned his head right, began panting. That's all. Now, through that information and all the data that we're tracking, will make some interpretations and criteria decisions. But it's so much easier, and it's so much less pressure, and the guesswork is taken out of it when you work with a professional that is tracking all of this stuff for you. I can just, and I know that's hard, not available to every person, but you actually have something cool that you were telling me about the other day with inpatient and outpatient. I loved that.
Well, yeah, I actually think that's all of this conversation leads to this inevitable conclusion, which is that, these behavior challenges are super complicated. They require nuanced solutions. They require experts, honestly. And similarly, like if you were to go into a psychiatric hospital or something like that, and with patients who are really struggling with phobias, for example, you're not going to be able to just get your average GP to treat this individual successfully. It's not going to happen. And so I think that's why CSATs are so brilliant, and why what you've done is so brilliant, is that you've created these experts, and they've gone out into the world and continued their education and integrated everything together. And people often say that it's inaccessible to say things like this, and I understand the world is pretty inaccessible, especially right now. It's going to get a little bit funkier, so
yeah,
buckle up, chaps. I can't single-handedly change that. What we can do and what we do all the time, I think Malena more than anyone else, is creating accessible resources the best what we can. So Malena has written books that you can buy for under $20, which contain just like enormous amounts of detail. You have your program, Mission Possible, which is, I don't know how much it costs now, but I've seen it. It's brilliant. It's like Guardian self-study kind of situation. How much does that cost now?
It's US $199, yeah. And that gives lifetime access, and people can ask questions and post comments throughout the program, which we respond to 365 days a year. So
okay, that's even though terrifying.
What's that?
I was saying that's terrifying. 365 days a year.
Not,
that's amazing.
Not just me.
Okay,
it's
good.
Not just me. I do have fellow colleagues that are helping me answer all of those questions. But what I mention it specifically because separation anxiety can be very isolating when you're working on the training. Not just the piece of like, oh my gosh, I can't leave my dog, but the piece of I did 3 days of training and my dog did this interesting thing and I'm not sure if I should go right, left, up, or down. And so we need to have people recognize that they need some sort of guidance, and not everybody can work 5 days a week with a trainer, and I understand that. But for instance, Mission Possible, $199 for lifetime access, and then your program you also have.
So what we do at CCA is we have, and I was explaining it to you the other day, we have a sort of inpatient and outpatient system, and inpatient systems are our private coaching one-on-one, and those cases are often, just like with inpatient cases at the hospital, they're serious. You need to be in very consistent contact with us, seeing you every week, talking to you 5 days a week, writing your sessions every day. Often the inpatient clients have other adjoining behavior challenges as well, issues with strangers, general fear, general dysregulation, dog issues, sound problems, all this stuff. You can imagine why they might require a slightly more close sort of treatment protocol, and that would be the inpatient. And then we also do outpatient, which is our group programs, and those are a lot more accessible. Sometimes people will do inpatient and then graduate to outpatient. Sometimes people will do outpatient and then graduate to inpatient. it goes various directions. And the group programs are, rather than us providing you with step-by-step prescriptive, this every single day you do this, the outpatient is more about giving you a little bit more control over what decisions you're making, and it teaching you, the guardian, empowering you to make those decisions yourself. So we have clients who graduate from our outpatient separation anxiety program. It's called Separation Skills, and that's a 3-month program. All of our outpatient programs are 3 months, because honestly, that's how long it takes to give you all the information you need, and to hold your hand through the process. And people will be messaging me, months afterwards being like, we just did 4 hours, we just got 4 hours, or, sending me pictures. And it's so cool. I think what you're doing in terms of like creating a dog training industry that works for even these challenging cases, and like helping people like us go out into the world and do this as well. I think it's honestly I think it's the future of the industry. So thank you so much for all your work, Malena. I think everyone here can just like jump in the comments, give Malena some love, because I think you're an absolute badass. The fact that you've got us all out here filming sessions and doing spreadsheets, I think, is a testament to your behavior change prowess.
Oh, you're making me blush, Karishma. Well, you should recognize, by the way, the incredible impact that you have, because you are getting the messages out there and getting the content out there and the information out there and showing it to people in an accessible way, and I'm not a great marketer. So it's like, we need the Karishmas of the world to get this information out and to be able to provide solid direction and provide hope for people that are working with a behavior case like this.
Such a big part of it. And I think that just like feeds into this overarching theme of my life right now, which is that, I think the dog training industry is part of a wider revolution of like kindness and fairness and justice and all of that stuff. And I think we all have our roles in the revolution, and it's cool. I tip my hat to you from my role to your role, because everyone has the things that they're good at, and I think that's topical for this moment as well. Yeah, I think this was such a fun conversation. We got into lots of like my favorite topics, like the nuance. We got into the data. We got into the holistic factors. We got into the fact that you really have to have experts on board, and the details behind that. So this was, I think, loads of amazing nuggets for everybody. Is there anything else? Where can people find you, Malena, if they want to come and learn more, and just kind of let us know where you are on the internet?
Yeah, it's hopefully fairly easy to remember, whether on Instagram, Facebook, or on the website. It's Malena, Malena DeMartini. So at Malena DeMartini, or MalenaDeMartini.com for the website. So I'm pretty easily can find me fairly easy with just my name, and we have all sorts of ways for people to contact us. So
yeah,
via the website. And one thing that you do well, I don't want to like extend this further, but that we both have on our websites and on within our content, there are a lot of free resources, blogs, and we have free resources for shelters and rescues and all of that. So I just want people to know, check out both of our websites if you haven't before, because there's a lot you can just peruse and gather information without any sort of cost behind it.
100%. I have, for the first time in my life, forgot to plug all our free stuff. I'm constantly plugging our free stuff, because I love free stuff. It's the whole point of my job, is that I can make the free stuff. So yeah, please, Malena's blogs, Malena's got, like you said, the shelter resources, and at our website, which you can find through the link in our bio, we have a webinar library. There's at least 3 hours of webinars on separation anxiety training there, one which kind of sets out the HEAL framework that we use and how separation work fits within that. And then the second one is a deep dive into actual training sessions, and how we would write those training sessions for folks. So do check those out, and I'll try and link them somewhere when I post this. All right, Malena, thank you so much. This was amazing. Thanks to everyone who stayed till the end. I'll post this on the main story, so you guys share it, tag everyone, go follow Malena, do all the internet things. And Malena, I'll speak to you later. Thank you so much.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.